Hi guys, Victoria Derbyshire seems to be the only journalist who's talking about Nathan Gill, who used to be a member of the Brexit Party, then became the Welsh leader for reform. Now, he admitted in court to taking money from the Russians in order to ask questions on their behalf in the European Parliament. Now, Maria Caulfield, who was a Conservative and defected recently to reform, was asked about this, and it was a bit of a car crash. Have a listen.
Just a week or so after you defected to Reform's former leader in Wales admitted in court, I'm sure you read about this story, taking cash bribes to make statements in favour of Russia while being a member of the European Parliament. Did that make you doubt your decision at all to join Reform?
Well, he was the leader of Reform for a very short period. He left Reform in 2021.
Did it make you doubt your decision to
join? No, because you will find in any party, and I know this as someone who's a member of the Conservative Party, that there will always be people in political parties that do things that are wrong.
That take bribes
absolutely,
to make pro-Russia statements in Parliament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would not, I would distance myself from him completely, as has Nigel Farage. But
that's interesting. On that point, Nathan Gill and Nigel Farage sat as MEPs together until the UK left the EU in 2020. Gill was UKIP's leader in Wales, then Reform's leader in Wales. He was at Leave EU's celebration party on referendum night. He was one of a handful of UKIP insiders who was pictured with Nigel Farage on the 24th of June 2016. Nathan Gill stood for the Brexit Party at the 2019 general election. There's video footage of Mr Farage and Gill campaigning together in Wales. Does that make you question Nigel Farage's judgment?
No, not at all, because
these tiny iota.
These allegations, and he pleaded guilty to those charges.
He did.
Were found after that, and he has not been a member of Reform since 2021. And so, you can never, in a political party, I think Labour have found this with Peter Mandelson, you can never account for individuals' behaviours. But what is important is how that is dealt with. He has not been a member of Reform since 2021. He pleaded guilty to those as allegations, and he's no longer a member of the party and hasn't.
Nothing to see. Move along. Okay. It was a mistake. Look, there's a bigger problem here. Who else took money from the Russians? And there's also another problem. When Nigel Farage was member of the European Parliament, he voted against measures to clamp down on corruption, to stop donations from foreign entities. There was a vote in the European Parliament, and Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party voted against these measures. Why did they do that? Why would Nigel Farage vote against corruption? Why would Nigel Farage vote against foreign donations? So we have to ask the question, did Nigel Farage also receive money from the Russians? Because Nigel Farage has been on the record talking very positively about Vladimir Putin. Why did he do that? Is it because he honestly believes Vladimir Putin is a good guy, or was a good guy? Maybe he's changed his tune since then. Or was there money involved? We have to ask these questions. Journalists have to ask these questions. Yes, Nathan Gill is gone. Nathan Gill admitted in court to taking money. But who else was taking money? Was it just one rotten egg? Or one rotten apple, as we say? Or was the whole batch rotten? Was everyone on the take? And there is a bigger problem as well. It wasn't just UKIP. It wasn't just the Brexit Party. It wasn't just British politicians taking money from the Russians. Many parties around Europe were taking money, were being influenced by Putin. And what were they doing? They were voting against measures to block foreign donations. They were voting against measures to block corruption. They were voting in favor of measures that would benefit the Russians. We still see these people today talking about how, we need to cut off funding to Ukraine, or how the invasion was NATO's fault. Some people may be legitimately concerned about what's happening in Ukraine and against an escalation, but others may be on the take from the Kremlin. And we need to have an investigation into that. Now, an investigation can take place in the European Parliament in respect to politicians who are still there, but when it comes to the UK, as it's no longer a member of the European Union, as Nigel Farage is no longer an MEP, I think it's up to the British government to investigate connections to Russia. The Conservatives wouldn't do it because for obvious reasons. So the Labour government need to do an investigation into corruption from Russia, into money coming from the Kremlin, and see how it was being spent. What were people doing with that money? Because I highly doubt it has stopped. The focus now is on China, but we can still see that the Kremlin wants to influence politics in Europe, wants to influence politics in the UK, and we need to root it out. We need to find out who's receiving money and expose those individuals. It's also interesting that Nigel Farage started out, his response to this was, I never met the guy, or I hardly met the guy. Richard Tice was also saying, I never met the guy. Who are you talking about? When there's actual footage of them being presented on stage, or Nathan Gill being presented on stage by the likes of Richard Tice. So something is very fishy. Something is very rotten. And it needs to be sorted out. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. I'll see you in the next video.